Hello everyone, welcome to the second YouTube video for the series of programming with ChatGPT. I decided to pick a topic that's extremely important and at the same time is very common at the workplace, which is creating secure APIs. So we're going to split this into two parts, creating an API and securing an API. We will learn new tools and we will learn new concepts about ChatGPT. It's going to be a more dense video than the last one, so I will just start right away. So I will go to Google Chrome and I will open ChatGPT. I will provide all the links in the description. So when it comes to creating the API, we're going to use Node.js since it's like the easiest and the most simple one to use. We are going to create two endpoints. One get endpoint to retrieve all the users, and one post endpoint to create a new user. So let's dive in and ask ChatGPT to do that for us. Can you create a Node.js application that has two endpoints? And notice how specific I am when I am providing that request. One, one get endpoint that retrieves all the users, and one post endpoint that creates a new user. The user has a name and an age. I'm going to hit enter, and as you can see it provides a lot of details and it provides the exact steps on how to create this application. So let's wait for a few seconds and then we can go in and implement implement that. So let's scroll all the way up. It's talking about it's using something called Express.js, which is a framework to create those APIs. And then first it says you need to have Node.js and npm. I already have them, but if you don't, you can install them with the link that I will provide in the description. Then follow the next steps. Create a new folder and navigate to that in your terminal. So I'm going to open the terminal right now. So as you can see, I'm following along ChatGPT. And let me create a new folder. I will call it demo and I will navigate to that folder. Then I'm going to execute this command, which will initialize my node project. I will install those dependencies. After that, it says create a new file called index.js and add the following code. So I'm creating the new file. I will paste the code. And if we go to step number 5, it says save the file, go to your terminal, and start the application by running the following command. So that's what I'm going to do. And as you can see, it says server is running on port 3000. Now we need to test our API. Now in the last video, we used Puppeteer to test our browse interaction. But to test the APIs, we're going to use a tool called Postman. I already have that installed. I'll open Postman and I will show you how we can test the endpoints using Postman. So once the Postman page opens, you will see a lot of stuff. But for now, we are going to click the new button on the top left. I will choose HTTP and I will select Get. I will test the Get endpoint first. And if I go back, it provides me this endpoint. And let me go back to Postman and paste it. And I'm going to test this endpoint. And as you can see, the status is 200, okay, which is good. And you'll see an empty list as a response, which makes sense because we didn't create any user yet. Now it says to test the post method, it's the same endpoint with a JSON payload of name and age fields to create a new user. So let's go back and let's change this from get to post, and let's paste the URL that we copied, which is the same. Now, in order to send a JSON body, what you need to do is you need to click body and then go to raw and then change text to JSON because this is a JSON body. And then we need to provide two fields, the name and the age, which is the same fields that we mentioned during our initial request. I will say name, Mustafa, age 99. Let's click send. And it says 201 created, which is very good. Now, in order to confirm that this information was created, that the user was created, we need to change this to none because I'm going to change this back to get, and I'm expecting the user to be there when we retrieve all the users. And as you can see from the get endpoint, we are able to retrieve all the users. So we have done the first step, which is creating an API using using ChatGPT with a get endpoint, a post endpoint, something that is very typical. A very small disclaimer, which is that right now it's storing the information in a local variable. Typically, in a real life scenario, you would store that in a database, which I'm going to explore more in future videos. But since this is a simple example, we can use this as um, as a good example on how to create APIs. Now, the second part is actually securing those APIs. How can we secure those APIs? Now, there are a lot of tools to do that. I'm going to use Auth0 to manage that, but there are a lot of options. You can use Okta, you can use Auth0. A lot of cloud providers provide that as well. I'm going to use Auth0. There's a free version, and they have a lot of features when it comes to securing the apps. So I will go into auth0.com and then I will click login. Now there are a lot of options on how to log in to Auth0. So you can go log in using Google or Microsoft, etc. I was already logged in, so I'm currently directed to this page. On the left side, you will see a lot of things, but for our simple purpose, the only thing that we should be focusing on is the applications part. So if we expand that, we see two things, applications and APIs. We need to start by creating a new application. An application basically represents the client that is going to call our API. So let's go to applications. You'll see a default application already created for us, but for learning purposes, we will create a new application. And now there are multiple options of the application types. For our use case, we are going to use a machine-to-machine application, which means that we are securing our API from other APIs. So our APIs will be called by other backend APIs as well. So in that case, we're going to pick this option. I'm going to click create. It asks us where to tie this application for which API. Now, when we log in, when our accounts are created with Auth0, they create an API for us by default. I'm going to select that default one. When it comes to permission, we can have a more fine-grained permission or security to our APIs. For example, let's say there are two APIs that call our API. We can say, okay, API A has permission to retrieve all the users, but API B has permission to create new users. Now, for our simplicity, we are going to give permission for our application to perform all operations, but just giving you like information that you can control which access you can provide to which application when they call up our backend. I'll click authorize, and our application is now created. Now let's go back to ChatGPT, and I'll go ahead and say, can you secure those endpoints using a client credentials flow, which is the using OAuth. I'll just say, can you secure those endpoints using OAuth? Client credentials flow, for example. I'll hit enter, and let's wait a little bit. Okay. Okay, so let's scroll up. So first it says let's install those two libraries. Okay, let's go ahead and let's follow the steps from ChatGPT, and let's install those dependencies. Second step, update the index.js with the following code. I'll just go ahead and copy this code, and I'll just delete the index.js, and I'll just update it with a new code. Now before I save, I noticed something while I'm reading this description. It says replace your client ID and your client secret with your actual client credentials. Okay, so let's let's scroll to the top and let's replace that. And I'll show you where to get that from Auth0 website. So when we go to the website and go to the settings, you will see the client ID and the client secret. Let's take that. This is the client ID, and this is the client secret. Okay, so let's go back to our ChatGPT. So we updated both of these values, and it explains more how this logic actually works. Yeah, this special specific authentication requirement. This is an example of simplified scenario, etc., etc. And notice something here that is very important. I was actually about to mention it, which is that in a production environment, you should store the client credentials securely. So you should never put this in plain text. And if you did, you should never push this to GitHub or anywhere outside your machine. In the future, we are going to explain videos on how to secure those credentials in a safe place so that they are not revealed publicly. Okay, it seems that I've done everything I hope. I'm going to save this for now, and I'm going to run the application. So now if I click send, let's see what's going to happen. It says unauthorized, which is expected. Now, how can we call our API securely? I will show you how to do it using Postman. So if you go to authorization, you have to pick, I mean, there are a lot of ways, but I will show you one way to do it. You click on OAuth 2.0, yeah? And then let's scroll down. You want to keep this as client credentials since that's the one that we are using. Now, when it comes to access token URL, the way to get this value is You can go to OAuth, and then if you go to advanced settings and go to endpoints, this is the token URL. So I'll go back to Postman and paste that in. The client ID is, as I showed you previously, you scroll all the way up and you copy the client ID from here. And this is the client secrets. For now, as I mentioned, we're going to keep the scope as blank, but we can make our APIs more fine-grained and add scopes to it. This is correct. I'll leave the refresh token for now for simplicity. Now, when it comes, and this varies between authentication servers, but when we talk about um, Auth0, we need to pass additional information. I will show you the exception, and then I will show you how to debug that exception and how to fix it. I will click create a new access token, and it says authentication failed. And if I went to view console, it says access denied, description, no audience parameter was provided. And no default audience has been configured. So I will go back to Postman and I will provide the audience um, as we are getting the access token. How to do that? Under the token request, you can provide additional parameters. So I'm going to provide the audience as additional parameter. Again, this varies between which authentication provider you are using. I know this because we are using Auth0, so you can read more of that in their documentation. How to get the audience? What you can do is you can go to APIs. You have to go to the API that you linked your application with, which is this one, if you remember. I will click copy next to the API audience. Let's go back to Postman and let's pass that as the value, and I will check mark the key. Now, if I click get a new access token, it will say authentication complete. I'll click proceed, and I will say use token. And if I click send, it still says unauthorized. So let's try to investigate what actually happened. Let's investigate what actually happened. Why does it still say unauthorized? I'm going to say I got even after providing the correct token. Let's see what ChatGPT is going to say about this. Now it says, I apologize for the confusion, and this is very important. And it's something that I faced when I prepared this video a lot. Um, Sometimes ChatGPT doesn't really understand the requirement, and a huge part of this is the way that you're phrasing the question, which is one of the main points of this video. So yes, we are learning about securing the APIs and all that, but we are also trying to learn phrasing the questions. When I provided that these three last words, I confused ChatGPT completely. Okay, so let's scroll down. This is the implementation not for handling token. In case we're using client credentials, using tokens, and the auth you need to implement the auth code validations. And if I scroll all the way down, and it provided some information. Okay, it says then replace things with this and replace this with that, etc. And if I scroll all the way up, you'll notice something weird happened. It said to implement, you need to secure the endpoints. you need to implement the auth authorization code flow or the auth implicit flow. And if you're familiar with securing APIs, you know that this is incorrect. And I'm almost certain that even with this, I will still have issues. And I've actually been having issues for a long time just because I was phrasing the question incorrectly. So just to save you time, I already familiar with a library that we can use to secure our applications. So most of the times, what I would recommend is to use ChatGPT as a syntax tool rather than asking a generic question on how to secure your APIs. Typically, you would use it um, if you know which library to use, but you're not sure how to do it using that specific library. ChatGPT, in that case, would provide much more accurate result than giving it something generic as this. And typically, especially if you work in a specific company, the way to secure your APIs or to handle APIs or to do user stories will be the same among all developers, kinda like 80-90% of the time. So you see what your team is doing and you want to implement that. So I'm going to reply and say, can you secure the API using this library? And I know for a fact that this library actually works because I've been doing because I'm familiar with OAuth and security. So I'm going to hit enter. I actually didn't write the right question. That was by mistake. So I'm not sure if it was able to catch on. If it didn't, that's fine. I will rephrase the question. So to keep the existing code, let me scroll down. Yeah, I didn't rephrase the question correctly, and that was my bad. Can you secure the endpoints only using with I'm saying secure the endpoints using this library with express dash JWT. Let's see. And now let's wait a little bit until it provides the final response. And as you can see, it's a little bit slow. Sometimes it's slow, and sometimes it actually like keeps stalling. If it kept stalling, what I recommend is just copy your previous question and refresh the page, and then go to the same session that you had with ChatGPT. Yeah. So for now, I'm going to copy the code and install the needed libraries. I will stop the application and I will go ahead and paste the libraries that we need to install. And then I will copy the updated code. Is it done? So I think it's done. I'll copy it and then let's paste it into index.js. And if I scroll all the way up, actually this is from the previous code. And again, as you can see, it still thinks that we still need this, but I know that we don't use this code anywhere. So I'm going to delete this function and I'm going to remove this library. This was a library that was recommended from previous attempts. We only need these two libraries. And now, if I read the description of ChatGPT, you'll see that it says replace the JWT endpoint with the actual URL of JWKS JSON Web Keyset endpoint. And I will show you where to find that. So if you go to OAuth and go to applications and you go to your application, and then if I scroll all the way down and go to the endpoints, again, it's in the advanced settings, go to the endpoints. It should be this one, the one that says JSON Web Keyset. I will copy this one and I will go back to my terminal and I will paste the corrected endpoint. Now, when it comes to the audience, again, you go to the API, we go to our API and copy the audience. And if you go to the issuer, let's go back to ChatGPT. Let's say what it does it say about the issuer. With the actual file specific to your configurations. Anyway, the issuer is actually your domain. So I will go back to Auth0. I'll go to applications. I will go to my app. Now, even though a lot of these things seems to be specific to Auth0, but they are very similar depending, even for the other auth providers as well. So I'll go to advanced settings. I'll go to endpoints. I mean, I can copy one of any of those and just remove the last part. But I guess what I'm going to do, I'll just scroll all the way up and add HTTPS at the beginning and then post fix it with the domain. Okay. I think now everything looks good. I hope I did not miss anything. Or okay, I mistakenly deleted the file. So let me just redo the whole thing. But now I'm not going to explain the steps. I'll just do it as quickly as I can. So let me just scroll all the way up. And again, same steps. I'll go here. I'll go to the domain. I'll replace the issuer. I'll go to the audience. Before the audience, I'll just copy the endpoint for the web key set. And if I go to the audience, let me go to the audience and just copy the thing. And repetition is always a good thing. It gives you muscle memory on how to do certain things. And now I will run node index.js. It says J888 middleware is not a function. Let's go back and let's fix this as quickly as possible. Um, JWT middleware is not a function. So that's a very good point. Why does it say that this is not a function? And this is something else I wanted actually to share, which is I mentioned in the introduction that ChatGPT is trained up to data of 2019. So it's not trained on any data after 2019. So in that case, where syntax of certain functionalities change after that period of time, after 2019, ChatGPT is not going to help. So how can we search for information that is more recent that we cannot know through ChatGPT? The easiest way is actually to copy the library name, for example, and just read the documentation. So I will paste the library, and this is the official documentation of the library. And if you scroll down, it shows you exactly how to initialize the library, which was slightly different than what ChatGPT provided to us. It's not that ChatGPT got this line from its head, which is this. It was probably the way to initialize the library long time ago, and it was just changed recently. Okay, so let's go to here and I'll just paste it below this, and I'll just say require express JWT. And instead of saying that this is express JWT, I'll just say this is JWT middleware, and I'll delete the above line. I'll call this once just to be consistent. I'll save this. Let's run again. It says JWT middleware is not defined. Let's go back. I actually replaced the order. That was my mistake. And now this one should be express JWT. And now it's running. Let's test this. Now, before I will make an unauthenticated call to test this, I'll click send, and it says follow one unauthorized, which is good, which is what we expect. Now I will generate the token, and if I click use token and I click send, it still says unauthorized. It still says unauthorized. No authorization. No, this is fine. A JWT issuer invalid. Expected this. Give me 1 second. Let's ask ChatGPT how to get the issuer for auth0. Okay, so I'm certain I've done it correctly, but I think I need to add the slash at the end. So let's stop the application, and then let's go to index.js, and let's add the slash at the end. Let's see if that fixes the problem. So now let's go back to postman, and as you can see, it's working now. It's giving me 200, and if I change this to no auth, it's giving 401. I send it securely, it's giving 200. So I wanted this to be as realistic as possible. I wanted this to be some sort of interaction where I make mistakes. I try to learn which things ChatGPT can help me with, which things ChatGPT that cannot help me with. We found some issues. You can see which questions ChatGPT helped me with, how to secure the API, how to use Postman. And I hope that you found this very realistic and very useful. And I hope that you enjoyed the video. Sorry, it was a little bit long. And have a nice day. Thank you and goodbye.